Hello and welcome to episode 250 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. First of all, I need to thank all of you so much for helping us reach another amazing milestone in our 250th episode. We have posted a podcast every Thursday since February of 2021, which means that we are also getting close to our 5-year anniversary. None of this would have been possible without the support of all of you who listen each and every week. We have not made $1 for ourselves over the course of this time, and we've actually raised or helped raise thousands of dollars for various charities ranging from food banks to domestic violence shelters to LGBTQ plus charities to the Boys and Girls Club. All we ask to help us keep going with this show is that you subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. While you're there, check out videos and vlogs from the theme parks and other great travel destinations. Through the end of the month, I am posting a vlog every Monday from my late September visit to Walt Disney World. You can go back and see the past vlogs and catch them the next 2 weeks as well. Every time you watch something, try to click that like button and leave a positive comment. Those things actually do really help us. On today's show, I'll be doing something special in honor of our newest milestone. I'll be flying solo today for another episode in my series on former Disney chairman and CEO Michael Eisner. It was during Eisner's tenure that the Walt Disney Company acquired Mirimax. This was a big deal for the company, allowing Disney to enter the world of independent cinema at a time when indie films were really taking the entertainment world by storm. Miramax released prestigious movies, hit movies, and movies that always seemed to be nominated for, if not winning, all of the major awards in Hollywood. In many ways, this very podcast owes its start to Miramax. After falling in love with the early films of writer-director Kevin Smith, who released many of those films through Miramax as a teenager, I followed Smith's career right into podcasting. It was when I saw him speak in an event in Tucson, Arizona on my 37th birthday that Smith told the crowd that everyone should be starting their own podcast to talk about things that interest them. I was still the sports director for a statewide radio news network, a DJ for an internet rock radio station, and a DJ for a pop radio station in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. So my broadcasting chops were staying fresh, and I didn't have any shortage of platforms to talk to big audiences. Still, I filed away that advice knowing that one day I would probably want to start a podcast. I never would have dreamed that starting one would have led to the creation of some of my closest friendships, raising money for charities that are very important to me, getting media credentials for pop culture events, and being recognized in the theme parks. It's also allowed me to keep my broadcasting skills honed at times when I have been between broadcasting jobs. Anyone who knows the full story of Miramax, however, knows that there is a dark side to the company. When Eisner and Disney purchased Miramax, they didn't realize that they were almost literally making a deal with the devil. The little film company known for creating movies that changed the course of cinema for over a decade was run by a monster who took advantage of his position of power, a position that only grew stronger and more powerful after receiving the backing of Disney to harass and abuse women who worked under his leadership. Harvey Weinstein dropped out of the State University of New York at Buffalo because he was obsessed with starting his career in business. Instead of pushing through with his degree, Weinstein joined with his brother Bob and acquaintance Corky Burger to start Harvey and Corky Productions. The company found a lot of early success producing concerts in the Buffalo area. Some of the major acts they booked in the 1970s were Jackson Browne, the Rolling Stones, The Who, and even Old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra. Harvey and Bob Weinstein continued their professional relationship with Corky Burger on their next business venture. Using the connections and financial capital they had built up producing concerts, they created the company that would make them initially famous and then infamous. Harvey and Bob took inspiration from their parents Miriam and Max to come up with the name of their next project. The independent film company Mirimax Films was officially founded in 1979 to create and distribute film projects that larger companies would consider too risky of a financial investment or wouldn't generate large enough profits. In the early days of Miramax, these were mostly music-related movies. An early success was the concert film Paul McCartney's Rock Show in 1980. The company's first big hit came from The Secret Policeman's Other Ball in the spring of 1982. Producer Martin Lewis turned several benefit shows for Amnesty International into 2 British films. Miramax purchased the rights to those movies and worked with Lewis to create the one movie that was focused on American audiences. Not only did the movie raise a lot of money for the Human Rights Organization, but Amnesty International's profile in the United States was raised significantly. Harvey and Bob Weinstein continued to expand the business model by producing art house films for the next few years. Most of these movies were critically acclaimed, even though they were never huge commercial successes. Miramax also learned from The Secret Policeman's Other Ball by purchasing the rights to films made by international filmmakers and adapting them for audiences in the United States. In 1977, Randall Dale Adams was convicted for the shooting of Dallas police officer Robert W. Wood the previous year. Prosecutor Douglas D. Mulder chose to pursue the death penalty and used questionable testimony acquired from David Ray Harris. According to Adams, it is Harris who was the one who actually committed the crime. By 1988, after a conviction on a separate crime, Harris himself stated that Adams was not involved. Adams's case caught the attention of documentary filmmaker Errol Morris. One of the main witnesses against Adams was psychiatrist Dr. James Grigson. Under Texas law, the death penalty could only be used if the jury thought the defendant was guilty and that death was the only way to prevent the defendant from committing violent crimes in the future. Grigson had gained the nickname Dr. Death because he had spent a decade and a half testifying in murder cases that the defendant in question was, quote, 100% certain to reoffend. To shine a light on this practice, Morris used his talent for making documentaries to produce The Thin Blue Line for Miramax in 1988. The film was so successful that it was credited with leading to the retrial that got Adams's conviction overturned and got him released from prison. The Thin Blue Line won awards from both the New York Film Critics Circle and the National Society of Film Critics for Documentary of the Year. The Oscars took the controversial view that it did not meet the requirements to be labeled a documentary, so it was not put up in that category. When combined, the critical acclaim of the movie and the attention it gained for having a real-life impact on the justice system in Texas, it started to bring more attention to Miramax. The publicity the Weinsteins got from The Thin Blue Line would pale in comparison to what would happen the following year for the brothers. Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape was the movie that really made Miramax the premier independent film studio in the United States. Soderbergh wrote the script to the movie in 8 days during a cross-country trip and only had 1 week for rehearsal and 1 month for filming. The budget was only $1.2 million. It ended up earning more than $24 million in the United States and almost $37 million worldwide. The movie was eventually more successful critically. Sex, Lies, and Videotapes won 3 awards at the Cannes Film Festival, 4 at the Independent Spirit Awards, 2 from the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, and 1 each from the National Board of Review and the Sundance Film Festival. Soderbergh was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and the movie was nominated for 3 Golden Globe Awards. With the start of the 1990s on the horizon, big things were happening at the Walt Disney Company. After taking over as chairman and CEO of the company in 1984, Michael Eisner was starting to find his groove. Said to have the Midas touch because of all of his successes, Eisner was looking for new opportunities to grow the company. Raising theme park prices early in his tenure didn't slow down attendance and gave him a gigantic new revenue stream. The creation of the Disney Vault allowed for the release of animated classics on VHS while artificially inflating both the price and demand for the tapes. The animation department even went back to an old formula to create another princess movie with The Little Mermaid in 1989. This was going to eventually lead to the Disney Renaissance. Eisner was also growing the theme parks by adding Disney MGM Studios to Walt Disney World. While Eisner was at Paramount Pictures, he gained a lot of attention for his memo about the right direction for the company when it came to movies. He would carry this philosophy over to Disney. Eisner believed in trying to find movies with solid scripts that didn't require huge budgets. This was known as his singles and doubles approach. Eisner also knew that Disney had a reputation as a family brand. He was looking for ways to release more adult content. This is one of the reasons that he created Touchstone Pictures, which was under the Disney umbrella, but could get away with subject matters that were too risque for the brand. An early success of Touchstone was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which did feature some appearances from Disney characters like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and more, but also used blue humor and plenty of double entendres. Independent film was perfect for Eisner at the time. It would give him an outlet for movies that wouldn't have to be family friendly, and they would be relatively low budget by definition. To be honest, Eisner also loved to have the recognition of critics. Mirimax made perfect sense at the time and would make even more sense in hindsight. Actually, it was Mirimax that pushed the envelope enough to lead to a change in the rating systems. After the films The Cook, The Thief, His Wife and Her Lover by Peter Greenaway, and Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down by Pedro Almodovar, were both given X ratings by the MPAA, Weinstein filed a lawsuit against the organization. An X rating would essentially prevent a scripted movie from showing in any legitimate theaters. Weinstein's lawsuit was thrown out of court, but has been credited as one of the reasons for the creation of the NC-17 rating. The classification that was stronger than R, but came short of being labeled as pornographic, was introduced just 2 months after the suit was dismissed. Despite dealing with multiple adult and controversial themes, 1990's The Crying Game didn't need an NC-17 rating. The R-rated film was set during the Troubles in Northern Ireland and covered race, sex, gender, nationality, religious identity, and sexuality. Director Neil Jordan was disappointed with the initial response to the movie. After showing at festivals in Italy and North America, the film was released in Ireland and the United Kingdom. Jordan believed the political nature of the story hurt the early box office numbers. The English press was very critical of the film, particularly due to a bombing of a pub in London and the sympathetic way the film portrayed a member of the IRA. When Miramax promoted the film to American markets, they asked audiences not to reveal the surprise ending and played up the sexual politics of the plot. Because American audiences were either not as knowledgeable about the Troubles or the fact that they were not directly impacted by them on a daily basis, the Irish politics didn't play as big of a part in whether crowds would want to go to the theaters. On a budget of $2.3 million, The Crying Game ended up making $71 million at the box office. Neil Jordan won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. The movie won Best British Film at the British Academy Film Awards, Best Screenplay by the Boston Society of Film Critics, Best Foreign Language Film by the Chicago Film Critics Association, and Best International Film at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. Those are just a few of the honors it received. Successes like Sex, Lies, and Videotapes and The Crying Game attracted Eisner to Miramax. The Weinstein brothers, however, were attracted to the prospect of gaining more power in Hollywood. Disney purchased the company on June 30th of 1993 for $60 million. The deal guaranteed that Harvey and Bob Weinstein would keep their positions atop the company and that Disney would assume an additional $40 million worth of debt that Miramax had accumulated. For some of our younger listeners, the 1990s may be the decade of NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and Britney Spears. When picturing the decade, you might see bright colors and hear fun pop music. Those trends were really more prevalent in the later part of the 90s. The early 90s were dominated by an independent ethos that permeated through pop culture. Grunge bands like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains, along with alternative bands like R.E.M., Smashing Pumpkins, and The Cure, dominated the radio. Low-budget movies were seen as hip and a counter to some of the high-budget spectacles of the 1980s. Teenagers were wearing Doc Martens, flannel, and jeans with holes in the knees. Integrity was a huge thing in art conversations. It was seen as almost taboo in many cases for an artist in music or film to pursue enormous financial success. There was a dividing line between what was economically successful and what was culturally relevant or critically acclaimed in a way that doesn't exist in the current media landscape. People were also way more willing and able to spend money on media. The internet was still a gimmick and computer video was grainy and slow. It was just part of the culture to go to concerts, record stores, video rental places, and yes, movie theaters. The zeitgeist was ready for a company to pump out a string of classic independent films. Harvey Weinstein also had a talent for promoting his movies, and he used notoriously shady tactics to keep his projects getting nominated for, and most of the time, winning major awards. Those awards would give the movies a second life. The first film that Miramax Films ever fully financed was 1994's Pulp Fiction. If Sex Lies and Videotapes and The Crying Game primed the pump, Pulp Fiction opened the floodgates of indie cinema. Writer and director Quentin Tarantino came up with the story with Roger Avary. Tarantino even used some scenes Avary originally wrote for his 1993 film True Romance. While the $8.5 million price tag on the movie was higher than previous Miramax offerings, it still wasn't so expensive that Tarantino was forced to stick to traditional story structures. Basing the plot on pulp magazines and crime novels of the mid-20th century, Tarantino also decided to tell the story out of chronological order. The overtly violent nature of Pulp Fiction was also made possible by the fact that the movie didn't have to appeal to the widest possible demographics. With Tarantino's success in 1992 with his first work Reservoir Dogs, he was a big enough name to attract some high-profile actors to the project, featuring John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Bruce Willis, Christopher Walken, Rosanna Arquette, Ving Rhames, and more. Pulp Fiction gave moviegoers an excuse to try the movie, and word of mouth of the unusual concept and great performances spread. The box office take was almost $214 million. It was awarded the highest prize at the 1994 Cannes Film Festival and was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. Tarantino won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. Tarantino and Avary started writing the script that would become Pulp Fiction, while the two of them were working at a video store in Southern California called Video Archives. Roughly 3,000 miles away, in a combination video store and convenience store in New Jersey, there was another wannabe screenwriter making minimum wage and dreaming of something bigger. Kevin Smith saw the indie film Swingers on his 21st birthday and was instantly inspired to make his own movie. The registered jockey went to the Vancouver Film School for 4 months, but dropped out to use the rest of his tuition money to go towards his first film project. He went back to his job at the Quick Stop convenience store in Leonardo, New Jersey. He sold his comic book collection, and he maxed out his credit cards to get just over $25,000 to make the film. To accomplish anything with such a low budget, Smith cut every corner possible. He filmed in black and white. He had friends and relatives playing a lot of the secondary roles in the picture. He even took inspiration from Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing and confined the events of the story to one day, mostly taking place in one location. This meant that most of Clerks was filmed inside the convenience store and its adjacent video store. Most days he would work the store during the day and film overnight. A seemingly throwaway gag where the store's shutters are broken was added to the very beginning of the script to explain away the reason the store's windows were blocked and not looking outside. This meant they could film daytime scenes overnight as well. Smith, assuming he was making the worst financial decision of his life, decided to play the character of Silent Bob, a drug dealer who hung out outside the convenience store with his partner Jay. If he was going to waste $25,000 to make a movie, he wanted to be able to watch himself in it while he was paying off those credit cards. Initially, Smith was devastated when Clerks premiered at the 1993 independent feature film market in New York. It played to an almost completely empty audience. One very important person did see Clerks, however. Bob Hawke was a legendary producer and consultant in the film industry, and he got the black and white picture a place at the 1994 Sundance Film Festival. It was while at Sundance that Smith's life forever changed. He won the Filmmakers Trophy for Clerks, and he sold the rights to the movie to Harvey Weinstein and Mirimax. It would go on to win 2 awards at the Cannes Film Festival as well. Clerks made a modest $4.4 million at the box office, but really ended up making its money in VHS and later DVD sales. The cultural impact of the movie, however, was more valuable for the likes of Harvey Weinstein. After Smith made his second movie, Mallrats, with Universal Pictures, the movie even featuring a storyline in which a character was going to propose to his girlfriend when Jaws popped out of the water at Universal Studios Florida, he went back to Miramax for his third movie, Chasing Amy. Weinstein wanted Ben Stiller and David Schwimmer to play the 2 primary male leading roles in the film, but Smith had written the leading role with his friend from Mallrats in mind. After complaining to Smith about being typecast as the tough guy and antagonist in movies, Ben Affleck was thrilled to get the chance to play the protagonist and show more of his acting range. Since Smith wouldn't listen to Weinstein in matters of casting, also giving the lead female role to his girlfriend at the time, Joey Lauren Adams, Miramax would only provide a $250,000 budget. Harvey Weinstein loved the final project, and the movie exploded to make $12 million at the box office. It was also another very successful film on VHS and early DVD. In Chasing Amy, Ben Affleck got a small role for his close friend from back in Boston, Matt Damon. As an assignment for a playwriting class at Harvard, Damon had to write a 40-page script. Noticing that the two were having trouble finding really good roles in well-written movies, Damon got Affleck to work with him on perfecting that story. The duo eventually sold the script to Castle Rock Entertainment for $650,000 and $750,000 if it was produced with Damon and Affleck holding on to sole writing credit. By the time Damon and Affleck had adapted the story from its original status as a thriller into a more grounded story about down-to-earth characters, executives were eyeing Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio for the 2 lead parts. While working with Smith on Mallrats and Chasing Amy, Affleck told the writer-director about the issues. Castle Rock had told Damon and Affleck that if they could find someone to buy the script and reimburse the company for the money they had already paid, they could do that. Otherwise, Castle Rock would make the movie with the talent it wanted. Kevin Smith had read the script, loved it, and promised to take it directly to Harvey Weinstein. Miramax purchased the rights to Good Will Hunting, reimbursed Castle Rock, and Weinstein allowed Damon and Affleck to play the 2 leading roles. After Smith declined the offer, fellow indie cinema director Gus Van Sant signed on to direct the movie. Comedian Robin Williams had started taking more and more serious roles since his work on Good Morning Vietnam in 1987 for Disney's Touchstone Pictures. Most notably, he combined his humor and dramatic chops in 1989's Dead Poets Society. William took the role of Dr. Sean McGuire, a character who grew up in the same neighborhood as Will Hunting and could relate to being an academic prodigy from South Boston. Sean would serve as Will's therapist in the movie. It was the role Williams was born to play. He had to walk a tightrope between lighthearted moments and serious monologues. At the Oscars, Williams won Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of Sean, and Damon and Affleck won Best Screenplay written directly for the screen. On a $10 million budget, it made over $225 million at the box office. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon became immediate A-list celebrities. In a brilliant public relations move, the two newly minted Hollywood hunks took their mothers to the Oscars as their dates. Miramax certified itself as a company that didn't just make art house or violent movies, but films that could be shown in theaters all over the country and compete with big budget fare. Good Will Hunting was released in 1997, and Miramax followed its success the following year with Shakespeare in Love. It made almost $290 million on a $25 million budget, but the success it had come award season actually started to show the cracks in the Miramax machine. Harvey Weinstein had developed a reputation for aggressive awards campaigns. He saw the success that movies like Pulp Fiction, Clerks, and Good Will Hunting would get after picking up hardware. The publicity of success during award season could give a movie a second life. Plus, Harvey Weinstein loved being known as the guy who released great works of cinema. Shakespeare in Love won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Actress for Gwyneth Paltrow. The overwhelming consensus was that Saving Private Ryan would be named Best Picture, and that Cate Blanchett would win Best Actress for her work starring in Elizabeth. Many in Hollywood claim that Weinstein forced the talent in Shakespeare in Love to do an unprecedented amount of press for the movie, even after the film was already released. The resulting controversy changed the narrative from Shakespeare in Love being a critically acclaimed movie that exceeded expectations at the box office to a movie that tricked its way into an Academy Award over Saving Private Ryan. Ironically, Ben Affleck had a role in Shakespeare in Love, while Matt Damon played a minor part in Saving Private Ryan. During Disney's partnership with the Weinsteins and Miramax, there were 3 movies that caused some tension. After initially purchasing the rights to the movie Kids for $3.5 million, the Walt Disney Company refused to allow Miramax to release it due to the graphic nature of the content. Kids was given a rating of NC-17, and Disney still refused to release anything with that moniker. In 1994, Miramax fought the NC-17 rating that was initially given to Clerks by the MPAA, even hiring O.J. Simpson Dream Team attorney Alan Dershowitz to represent the company, but the MPAA changed the rating to R without any changes to the film. The MPAA would not be as kind with Kids and refused Miramax's request to change the rating. The controversy led to Harvey and Bob Weinstein purchasing the film back from Disney and creating a one-off company to release it. The brothers would take a similar tact with Kevin Smith's 4th movie, Dogma. The lighthearted comedy starred Affleck and Damon as angels banished by God, who try to use a loophole in Catholic dogma to try to get back into heaven. While Smith was a Catholic and even had a ritual of going to Mass on the release dates of all of his early movies, there were conservative Catholic groups like the Catholic League that wanted to use the film's affiliation with Disney to strike up a controversy. Just to highlight the hypocrisy of groups like the Catholic League, when Smith re-released the movie in theaters earlier this year with no association with Disney, he was met with one lone protester at one location. But the 1999 release was much different. Disney received threats of boycott. Smith received death threats. Once again, the Weinstein brothers were forced to buy the movie back from Disney and release it without the Miramax label. What many business observers believe was the final straw was the 2004 Michael Moore movie Fahrenheit 9/11. By 2004, Bob Iger was second in command at the Walt Disney Company, right behind Michael Eisner, who was still the chairman and CEO. Iger had already been claiming that the Weinsteins weren't being upfront about finances and that they were not accounting for, quote, account standard overhead, distribution fees, bonuses that we pay Harvey and Bob, nor are they applying current accounting rules. With the relationship already strained, with Mirimax looking to release a movie from left-wing documentarian Michael Moore that attacked the Bush administration in an election year, the more cautious members of Disney leadership were concerned. After the Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake so-called wardrobe malfunction at halftime of the Super Bowl, the FCC and the Bush administration in general were being very aggressive about media it viewed as being too risque, controversial, or, quote, anti-American. This was still in a post-9/11 world that had just seen the Chicks, then known as the Dixie Chicks, go from the most popular group in country music to essentially out of the industry in a few weeks after lead singer Natalie Maines made a fairly bland insult of President Bush at a concert in England. If America's sweethearts could be canceled that quickly and conservative groups could rally for a boycott of them that quickly, imagine how fast they would be able to go after Disney for teaming up with the overweight and often sloppy working-class filmmaker Michael Moore. The Weinsteins eventually came up with a similar release strategy for Fahrenheit 9/11, but the damage was already done in their relationship with Disney. On a smaller note, Michael Eisner got upset with Harvey Weinstein in 1999 for creating the magazine Talk with Tina Brown and doing so under the Miramax umbrella. All of this led to a joint announcement on March 30th of 2005 from both Disney and the Weinsteins, stating that their contractual agreement would not be renewed past its September expiration date. Miramax Films would be folded into Buena Vista Motion Picture Group, and its budget would be drastically reduced. Harvey and Bob Weinstein would go on to start another company, the Weinstein Company, and took the Dimension Films label as well. By the end of 2005, Iger would take over as chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company from Michael Eisner. As we now know, Iger wanted to take things in a completely different direction. The 90s were over and low-budget indie movies weren't what was hot anymore. Iger would go on to acquire Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilms, and 20th Century Fox, among others. The company was about to launch the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was a license to print billion-dollar box office returns. Disney was going to put together a sequel trilogy for Star Wars. The philosophy was no longer the singles and doubles approach of Michael Eisner. Bob Iger wanted home runs with every swing. A movie like Clerks that earned the company respect and critical acclaim, but didn't even make $5 million at the box office, was seen as a waste of time. The Walt Disney Company, however, was certainly lucky to have separated itself from Harvey Weinstein in 2005. By October of 2017, the New York Times and the New Yorker both reported on more than a dozen women who accused Weinstein of sexual harassment, sexual assault, or outright rape. These initial stories led to other women in the film industry coming out with their stories about Weinstein, and eventually about other famous men in the entertainment industry. These cases were a direct cause of the Me Too movement. While there have been many court cases involving Weinstein since 2020, many with convictions, but a few that have had convictions overturned for procedural errors, he has been one of the rare perpetrators who have faced legal ramifications for their actions from Me Too allegations. In retrospect, making a deal with a monster like Weinstein would seem like a disaster. Of course, we have no idea what Michael Eisner knew about Harvey Weinstein when Disney acquired Miramax Films, but ignorance isn't an excuse. Eisner isn't going to enter into that big of a deal without doing some research into the character and business practices of the main figure in the company. For purely business purposes, the acquisition of Miramax did wonders for the status of the company in the 90s. Miramax also, at least for a while, was producing substantial profits for limited budgets. Like everything else with Eisner, it was a mixed bag. This has been episode 250 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Do me a favor and drop a congratulations for hitting 250 episodes in the comments on YouTube. And obviously make sure you're subscribed. We will be back next week. My good friend and co-host Maz will be here to talk about Disney's billion-dollar busts. These are recent Disney movies that made $1 billion at the box office but had no cultural impact whatsoever. It promises to be an interesting discussion. You can hear it next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.